The dollar is not America's currency. It is the world's currency, and America is the only country that does not have to earn it. Every other nation must export real goods and services to acquire dollars. America issues them. This arrangement has no historical precedent and no guaranteed endpoint, and the gap between those two facts is where the next phase of global economic conflict is already being fought. That is not an exaggeration. It is the most accurate description of the current monetary order that can be stated in a sentence. And understanding it, really understanding it, not as geopolitical color, but as the architecture underlying every trade balance, every debt crisis, every sanction and every war fought over resource access in the last 80 years, changes what you see when you read economic news. Start with what a currency actually is beneath the obvious. A currency is a claim on real resources denominated in a unit that a specific political authority guarantees. When you hold dollars, you hold a claim on American goods and services, backed by the legal authority of the United States government and the productive capacity of its economy. When you hold rupees, you hold a claim on Indian goods and services. The claim is real only insofar as the political authority backing it is real, and insofar as the productive capacity behind it exists. Currency is political before it is economic. For most of history, different currencies traded against each other at rates that fluctuated based on the relative productive capacities and political stabilities of the issuing countries. No single currency dominated global trade. Merchants and governments held reserves in whichever currencies were most reliable for the transactions they needed to conduct. The system was messy and inefficient. It was also pluralistic. No single country had structural monetary leverage over all others. The current order was constructed deliberately at a specific moment by specific people with specific interests in mind. In July 1944, with the Second World War still ongoing but its outcome increasingly clear, representatives of 44 Allied nations gathered at the Mount Washington Hotel in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, to design the post-war monetary system. The dominant figure was not a head of state. It was an economist. John Maynard Keynes represented Britain. Harry Dexter White represented the United States. Their visions differed significantly. Keynes proposed an international currency called the Bancor, administered by a supranational institution, which would have prevented any single nation from accumulating excessive reserves or deficits. White proposed a system centered on the dollar, which would have structural advantages that Keynes recognized and opposed. White's proposal prevailed. The Bretton Woods system fixed all currencies to the dollar at stable exchange rates, and fixed the dollar to gold at $35 per ounce. The dollar became the anchor of the global monetary system. The International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, established at Bretton Woods, were headquartered in Washington and structured with voting weights that gave the United States effective veto power over their decisions. A new monetary order had been designed, and it had been designed in America's image and interest. Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, then French finance minister and later president, called the dollar's global reserve status an exorbitant privilege in 1965. The phrase survives because it names something real. The privilege is this: when the global economy runs on dollars, every central bank, every trading company, every sovereign wealth fund needs to hold dollar reserves to conduct international business and protect against exchange rate fluctuations. This creates persistent demand for dollars that is not driven by American exports or American economic performance, but by the structural requirement of the monetary system. The United States can therefore run persistent trade deficits, importing more than it exports, without the currency crisis that would afflict any other country in the same position. The world needs dollars regardless of what America produces. It absorbs American debt because dollar-denominated assets are the reserve asset of choice. America borrows at lower interest rates than any other country because the demand for its currency is structural, not market-dependent. This is not a small advantage. The economist Barry Eichengreen has estimated that the United States saves tens of billions of dollars annually in lower borrowing costs from the reserve currency status alone. More significantly, it buys policy freedom, the ability to run deficits, to finance military spending, to pursue domestic economic policy without the external constraint that currency crises impose on other nations. When Argentina runs a deficit, the peso weakens, inflation rises, and the economy contracts. When America runs a deficit, the world buys treasury bonds. The constraint that disciplines every other economy does not apply to the country that issues the world's reserve currency. Now hold the counter-argument. Because the privilege has costs that are rarely acknowledged in the countries that celebrate it. The Triffin dilemma, named for the economist Robert Triffin, who identified it in 1960, describes the fundamental contradiction in reserve currency status. To supply the world with the dollar liquidity the global economy needs, the United States must run persistent current account deficits, must import more than it exports, sending dollars abroad. But persistent deficits eventually undermine confidence in the dollar's stability, threatening the very reserve status that makes the deficits possible. The reserve currency country is trapped if it runs surpluses, the world is starved of liquidity. If it runs deficits, it eventually destabilizes its own currency. The post-Bretton Woods history of the dollar has traced this dilemma. Nixon closed the gold window in 1971, ended the convertibility of dollars to gold, precisely because persistent deficits had created more dollar claims than American gold reserves could support. The Bretton Woods system formally ended. What replaced it was not designed at a conference. It was the informal dollar standard, the continuation of dollar dominance through the petrodollar system, through the path dependence of existing dollar-denominated contracts and markets, through the absence of a ready alternative. The dollar remained dominant, not because it was the best monetary anchor, but because switching costs were prohibitive and no alternative commanded sufficient trust. Here is the floor move. Something is shifting, not quickly, not cleanly, but visibly in the data over the past 2 decades. The dollar's share of global foreign exchange reserves has declined from roughly 71% in 2001 to approximately 58% as of recent figures. That decline is slow enough that it does not constitute a crisis. It is fast enough that it is visible as a trend. Russia and China have reduced their dollar holdings significantly following the use of dollar-denominated sanctions. The freezing of approximately $300 billion in Russian central bank reserves following the 2022 invasion of Ukraine demonstrated something that every central bank in the world observed simultaneously: dollar reserves can be frozen. They are not neutral financial holdings. They are subject to American political decisions. The response from several major economies has been explicit. China and Russia settled significant bilateral trade in their own currencies. The BRICS grouping, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and expanding membership, has discussed mechanisms for trade settlement that bypass the dollar. Saudi Arabia has signaled openness to accepting non-dollar payment for oil, which would directly undermine the petrodollar system that has anchored dollar dominance since the 1970s. None of this constitutes an imminent collapse of dollar dominance. The alternatives face their own structural problems. The renminbi is not freely convertible. The euro lacks a unified fiscal backing that would make it a reliable reserve asset at the required scale. No alternative currently commands the depth of markets, the legal infrastructure, and the institutional trust that the dollar has accumulated over 80 years. But the direction is visible. The dollar's dominance was not inevitable. It was constructed. Constructed things can be reconstructed. The question is not whether the current monetary order will change, but when, how quickly, and who governs the transition. Digital currencies add a new dimension to this. Central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, are programmable money issued directly by central banks. More than 100 countries are in various stages of developing them. China's digital yuan is the most advanced, and its design choices are instructive. A programmable currency can have expiration dates. It can be designed to be spent rather than saved, to stimulate consumption at will. It can be geographically restricted. It can be excluded from certain types of purchases. It can record every transaction in a form accessible to the issuing authority. The surveillance and control capacity of a CBDC is qualitatively different from anything existing in the current monetary system. Cash is anonymous. Bank accounts are monitored but imperfectly. A fully deployed CBDC, especially in an economy with limited cash alternatives, is a complete record of every economic transaction every citizen conducts. The monetary system and the surveillance system converge. This is not a hypothetical. It is the explicit design of several existing CBDC proposals. The private cryptocurrency movement emerged partly as a response to exactly this. Bitcoin was designed to be outside state control, a currency that could not be frozen, could not be inflated away, could not be monitored. Whether it has succeeded at this purpose is contested. On-chain transactions are permanently recorded and increasingly traceable. But the impulse behind it, the desire for a monetary system that does not require trust in any political authority, is a real response to a real concern about the concentration of monetary power that CBDCs represent. The tension between these two directions, state-controlled programmable money and state-resistant decentralized money, is the live contest over the future of currency. Both sides have genuine arguments. The state-controlled version enables monetary policy with precision and potentially reduces certain forms of financial crime. The state-resistant version preserves financial privacy and limits certain forms of political abuse of monetary power. The outcome will not be decided by which argument is better. It will be decided by which institutions have the power to implement their preferred architecture and which populations accept or resist it. Now bring this into your daily life, into the specific relationship you have with the unit of account in which your life is denominated. The currency you hold is a political artifact. It was issued by a political authority, backed by that authority's power to tax and its capacity to maintain confidence in its own stability. It is worth what it is worth because of a social agreement, maintained by institutional trust, economic performance, and in some cases military capacity to enforce the terms of the agreement. You hold it because you have to, because your wages are paid in it, your debts are denominated in it, your purchases require it. You have no practical opt-out from the currency of the jurisdiction where you live. This is not a conspiracy. It is how monetary systems work. But it means that every monetary policy decision, every interest rate change, every inflation target, every reserve currency arrangement affects your life without requiring your consent or even your awareness. The question is not what to do about that. Most individuals have very limited practical options for currency diversification. The question is simpler. The unit in which your entire economic life is measured, your savings, your debts, your wages, your worth in every transaction you will conduct for the rest of your life. What is it actually? Who controls it? What are they trying to do with it? And if the answer to those questions matters to you, when did you last think about it?